So today we are talking about, hi Tatiana. I think she's frozen. We're talking about how to promote healthy aging and basically the fundamentals of healthy aging. And I mean, there's so much to this. Obviously, there's an entire field of research and medical doctors who specialize in longevity. So, I mean, we could talk about this for days. But I felt like there were four things that I really wanted to focus on. So we're going to talk about those today. And I'll introduce what those are in a moment, but I just want to introduce myself for those of you that don't know me. My name is Jill Cruz, as you can see on the thing here, and I have this funny hair that just keeps staying there no matter how much I push it down. I don't know why. I'm a board certified nutrition specialist. I'm also a certified Big Leap coach. So if any of you know of the work of Gay and Kitty Hendricks, or you've read the book, The Big Leap, it's really interesting stuff. So I try to really incorporate that in everything that I do. So I have, my business is called Work With Your Nature Weight Loss. So we help women, and lately I've been saying work with your nature wellness and weight loss, because we are, ultimately the focus is weight loss is a byproduct of improved health. So how can we improve our health? And if we need to lose weight, then that happens sometimes, and sometimes it takes longer than others, but health first is really the focus. So that's just a little bit about me. I'm interested, I think part of the reason that I even got into nutrition in the first place was because I wanted to be healthy as I age. So it is something that I'm always thinking about. And so we work mostly with women. So I think it's different, for women than for men. There's definitely a lot of stuff that's different. I actually have a new podcast, which I recommend you all check out. I just did an interview today with these two women who wrote this book called, Taking Care of You. I'll find it later, but and we were talking about how the system, our medical system, really is designed to, it disempowers women. So, and that includes aging. They actually shared with me that up until 1998, I think they said, thank you, Tatiana says she loves my podcast. Yay! That, medications were not tested on women, just men. This is like, 25 years ago. And it wasn't until 2016 that they started to do testing on female animals. So like that's a whole nother thing, right? The lab work that they do on animals and everything, but they're only testing male animals. So we as women, as we age, a lot of the medications that we are subjected to are not tested on women. And a lot of the research is not done with women in mind. So we're at a disadvantage. And if you look into, like as a nutritionist, I've looked into research around pregnancy, like, can this person take this supplement even though she's pregnant or breastfeeding? Oh, there's no study done on that. So we just assume she can't. So there's a lot of imbalance in the medical world in terms of women's health. And when it comes to aging, this is no different. So we kind of have to look out for ourselves. And one of the biggest things what motivated me to do this webinar, this call, was that I think that we've been really taught that if you have overweight or obesity, that means that you're not going to age in a healthful way and you're going to die early. I mean, pretty much that's common belief. And that has been questioned actually a lot in a lot of research. So, and in particular, after the age of 72, the women who live the longest are the ones who are kind of in the middle. So they may have a BMI of like 25 to 30 or low 30s, even into the so-called obesity range. So you know, there's this relentless pursuit to lose weight, lose weight, lose weight. And it's like, well, actually, once you hit your 70s, that shouldn't be the focus anymore. So, you know, just kind of questioning a lot of the stuff that we talk about around aging. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff, hormones, all of that too. So I kind of wanted today to be a conversational as well as, you know, I mean, providing you some information. So the 4 areas that I want to focus on are movement, relationships, sleep, and nutrition. Now, stress can affect all of those things. So really there should be 5, but we're going to touch upon stress. So know that that's also, obviously, if you're super stressed, it could potentially affect your sleep. It could affect your ability to eat well. It could affect your relationships. So it's all intertwined. So I don't want to forget about stress, but especially when we talk about sleep, we can talk about things that there's a lot of overlap with a lot of this stuff. So when it comes to movement, this hair is just so funny. Why do you think that movement, in what way do you think movement promotes aging in a way that's dynamic, right? I think we're all here today because we want to be dynamic, we want to be active, we want to be energetic and travel and play with our grandchildren and our children. And I think that's a lot of what people talk about when we think about healthy aging. What does movement do? Just go ahead and call it out, and if you're shy, or, you know, not shy, but, you know, you don't feel like being on camera or whatever, you can put it in the chat. What do you think that movement does?
Well, it just keeps
Marlene,
everything going, you know, otherwise it becomes stagnant. Don't use it, you lose it, right? So.
Yeah, definitely. And Val says movement keeps the joints lubricated and muscles strong. Yeah, Mary, did you want to say something?
I was just going to say the same thing. If you don't use it, you lose it. So, and it does energize you. And I found it also helps with digestion.
Yes, you've personally experienced that.
Yes, I have. Thanks to you.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I'm so glad you brought that up. It's so true. And there is a lot of research around this. Our bodies, the bacteria in our gut know when we're moving. Like they respond differently. And people who are athletic, it tends to promote a favorable microbial population in the gut. So it's true. And also just, I think the simple one that I think a lot of people know about is, you know, if you're constipated and you walk or you move more, it tends to get the bowels moving as well. So that's a great point, Mary, that I honestly, I kind of forgot about that one.
Oh my God, I got to remember it every single day, because working, you get stuck in your chair and I'm like, get out of the chair.
Yes. Yeah. But that's a good motivator, you know. I always talk about motivation because like, what is going to get you up out of the chair? And it's like, oh, well, if I'm going to feel better today by getting out of the chair, I'm going to get out of the chair. As opposed to, you know, because that's one of the issues with talking about healthy aging is, well, that's a problem for future me to deal with, you know. I'll think about that when I turn 60 or 65 or so, you know. So it's nice when you have that feedback loop of you do something and you notice the benefits right away. So I know some people unmuted. I want to get to you, but also Jay is this Janice? Is it Janice? No. Tell me what your first name is. I'm sorry. I feel like I know your first name, but I can't remember. The J Patricam. Jean, right. Jean. Okay, I knew that. Yeah. So Jean says movement adds to mental health. That's big. Have you experienced that, Jean?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah. And Robin and Tatiana, or I don't know if you
Yeah.
unmuted on
No,
purpose,
no,
but
yeah, I just want to add, and yeah, Jill, you know, I'm a health and balance coach, and yoga is a big part of my life. But even just for the mental health, during the yoga classes, you probably will notice the Shavasana meditation is the last after the movement, because the movements does promote to stop the chatting in your brain, and it helps you to relax. So it does lead you to that state of mind where you can actually disconnect from the stress. So definitely big one. Movement when it comes to mental health is a big plus.
right. So it is quieting your mind.
Yeah.
And also, like, I notice for me, when I move, I have that, and I also, it also increases my creative flow, which is awesome.
Yep.
Robin, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just learned about kinetic flow up the spine. And that's a huge part of vitality and keeping that movement, especially in the spine, helps everything be more alive, basically, which helps the brain function better. And you think of 75 trillion cells in your body, getting pumped with spinal fluid and aliveness.
Yeah. Wow, that's so wonderful. Yeah. Yeah, this is all great. Jean says you feel better. She can't talk in the office, but you just feel better when you go outside and take a walk and see and feel nature. Marlene, movement may help with sleep, which I'll be getting to later. Yeah, so that's the thing about all of this stuff, is it's like, it's synergistic. You know, when you do one thing, it tends to augment something else. And that's, again, that feedback loop. Like, if you go for a walk, your brain feels calmer, you're in a better mood, you feel more, I think, like what Robin is talking about is like feeling enlivened and feeling vital. You feel that right away. And then at night, you fall asleep more quickly and sleep better. It's like, woo, this one I'm gonna keep. So I think just always, like, as part of this discussion, it's not just about, yeah, we all know movement helps you with healthy aging. Like, we all know that, right? The question is why, but also how can you do it? How can you actually implement this into your life? Because like Mary was saying, you know, like, oh, I just have to get up. Like, we know, but are we implementing? And I think that's an important thing, that if you have that positive feedback loop and you pay attention to it and you appreciate it, you're more likely to continue to do that activity. And I see Robin's on a ball. I'm standing up. Maybe some other people are standing today. Standing is wonderful. Like, if you can, you know, Robin, did you want to say something about the
Well,
ball?
just because you mentioned this before, and I've got a desk riser. I think you told me about this, and oh my God, it's making a huge difference. So, you know, having something that enables you to stand or sit at your computer is awesome. Just wanted to say that.
Huge. Did you get the Apex desk, Robin? Or no? I mean, that's the brand I have. I wasn't sure if you got this one. It's not important.
It's called a Versadex, and the beautiful thing is,
Yes.
I don't have to pull anything. It's just all automatic. It's
Yes. Yeah. No, and this is an investment, you know, if you know, not everybody can afford it, but like, it's worth it, you know, if you can get this, because it's like, it's huge. And Liz you have a walking treadmill under your desk. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Talk about movement. So yes, and there's a ton of research around movement and anti-aging. I want to bring up two things. One, I think, you know, what Robin was talking about, especially, is that sense of vitality. And, you know, I've had people in my life, I'm not going to name any names, who I watched age, who weren't active. And I saw the difference. My mother-in-law is a very active person. She's going to be 80 next month. And she works out at the gym. I don't think they do exactly CrossFit, but like CrossFit like thing. And about a year ago, she was making fun of me. She was like, Jill, I can lift a tire. You know how they like lift those tires? And she was like, can you lift a tire? I was like, I don't know. I don't think so. She goes on 12-mile hikes. I mean, she's a powerhouse, but it's really been a movement has been a huge factor in that. I'm sure of it. So movement keeps us vital. It keeps us moving. It keeps us feeling relevant. It calms the mind. It promotes sleep. And the other big thing that I want to talk about around movement that's very specific is that one thing that I don't know if for those of you on camera, maybe you can just raise your hand. Did you know that you lose muscle? We all lose muscle as we age. Did you know that? Okay. Yeah. So that starts in our 40s, Miriam. Yeah. So if you're over the age of 45, it's already been happening. So what happens is, and you may have heard me talk about this at other, calls that we've done. Once you get to a certain age, if you go for a doctor's appointment, they're going to ask for your grip strength. Why are they doing that? They're also going to ask for you to sit down and stand up as many times as you can over, I think, the course of 30 seconds. Why are they doing that? Does anybody know?
Again, ability to see if you have the mobility and you're able to do it.
Yes. So it's mobility and it's strength. So they are they're literally that's not just doctors being like, hey, we're going to check this out. That's because the results of those two tests correlate with health outcomes, and basically what they call morbidity and mortality. Morbidity is illness, mortality is death. So people who, I don't know what the threshold is. I think it's based on your age, but if you can only do 5 of those in 30 seconds and you're 60 years old, then they're gonna talk to you about that. So it's actually a risk factor. And that's because of, for a couple of things, but one important one is strength. And so if you continue to lose muscle and you do nothing about it, yeah, you may have some genetics in your favor. So it may not be, you may not have those issues, but for most of us, we're going to decline physically. And that is going to increase our risk for early death for a variety of reasons. Liz, do you want me to read that? Your dad was playing tennis until he was 89.
Chambers. Okay, I just sent you an email with a memo that you need to go get your ID. I wrote in the email, you have to go.
Somehow I have, okay, there we go. I got it. Sorry, Liz, did you want to say that out loud or?
Sure, I can. My dad, because I don't know that I was clear, he's 93 now. So he was playing tennis and literally got completely stopped by this pancreatitis. Like that day, he got it, bam, and he went back to playing tennis just a little bit, but he also has Parkinson's. And so, he's 93 and now it's like almost sad because he can still walk and get around, doesn't use a walker, but boy, but what was remarkable to me is how easy it was to stop being active, even after 80 years of being that active, and he just, it's also mental for him too, because it impacts all parts of him, but.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So that's, you're touching upon a point about physical activity that's important, is that if you haven't been active and now you decide at you're 65 or 75 or 85, you decide you want to be more active, it is harder to start the later you start. That is true for most people. And that decline will happen fast. So physical activity is, I spoke about it first because I actually think it's the most important thing. I actually do. I think it's more important than nutrition, definitely. Sleep and relationships, that's a whole nother thing. But in terms of what we think of as like health practices, yes, physical activity. So I think the way to be more active is to have a reason to do it. You have to have a reason. If you're feeling ambivalent about it, or you're just like, well, I don't really like it, you know, find something that you do like and do it, even if it's not strength training. Now, the way to really slow down that muscle decline is strength training, which could be you never lift a weight in your life, right? Tatiana will tell you, you could do it with yoga. You could just use your body weight. They have these amazing, all kinds of bands that you can buy for not a lot of money. Like you could do an entire workout by having a couple of bands and really be what they call resistance training or strength, strength training. So that's my biggest recommendation to you is, first of all, just move. Gardening, cooking, cleaning, puttering around, redecorate, like even just that is all movement. It's important. Don't give yourself credit for that, for cooking. Cooking is movement. Taking a walk, even if you're walking slowly, is movement. So let's give ourselves appreciation and, for that. And then, moving on from there, if you can do some resistance training, it's really going to help. And you're never too old to start. If you are older, like let's say you're over 75, let's say, or you've had structural issues like back pain, knee pain and stuff, you got to work with someone. Don't just go start strength training on your own. Work with someone who knows what they're doing. And I have resources if anybody wants. I know some great people. So let's move on from fitness or movement. We can come back to it if anybody has questions. And I want to talk about relationships. I'm not an expert in relationships. Not yet, at least. So the thing is that we need people. We need each other. And that is not woo-woo stuff. It's very real and it's very, very important. It's actually, I was just talking, one of the people I was interviewing this morning for my podcast, she's a medical anthropologist. And I asked her about this because I'm always so curious. And she totally agreed that, what happens is if we feel lonely, well, people who feel lonely die earlier, die sooner. And that was actually another, she's a psychotherapist that I work with. That I don't work with. I did a podcast with her. She helps people with relationships. So she knows all about relationships. And she said that loneliness kills us. It really does. And that's sad, because not everybody can control that, right? If you're not active, you can go and take a walk, most of us, right? But if you're lonely, you kind of have to seek out help, I think. But I really wanted to talk about that, how it's absolutely a risk factor, feeling alone, being alone. We need human interaction. And there are two levels. There's close personal interaction, like with, siblings or love, family members or spouse or friends. And then there's also, just superficial social interactions. We actually, ideally, we have both going on. So you say hi to your neighbor, you chat with the grocery store checkout person. So that, again, it's not my area of expertise, but I really needed to talk about it because it does affect our health directly. It's not it shouldn't be an afterthought when you think about everything you're doing for your own health. You have to include relationships in it, not just exercise and nutrition. So any questions or comments about that? I love the anecdotes. I think they're great for us to hear these stories. I don't know how indicative this is, but my great-grandmother, she lived to be 99. And when she was 98, she fell and broke her hip. And then she lived with us up until that point. you know, it was incredible. She was totally self-sufficient. She cooked her own food. She actually broke her hip moving furniture. 98 years old. And, but you know what, the decline, once she had the surgery, then she had to be in a nursing home because she really couldn't walk afterwards. It was so rapid. And, you know, she felt lonely, and it breaks my heart. I mean, I was probably 20, I was in my 20s, you know, sometimes I blame myself, but you know, she just didn't have that family interaction that she had her whole life. And that combined with, again, the not, you know, being immobile, she died within less than a year of the fall. No medical conditions to speak of. She was not on any medications. She just died. And, you know, so anyway, I don't want to get too, bring everybody down in the middle of a Wednesday. Yeah, having a pet helps, you know, oh my gosh. And also if you have a pet, you have to kind of move, right? You got to walk the dog, or, you know, spend time with, you know, like do little things for the cat or whatever. I love that. I think that's actually true. I don't know about the research around that, but I think you're right, Marlene. Having a pet can help. So let's move on. Did anybody want to say anything? I gave you a chance to think of
Hi.
any.
Jill,
Yes.
Jill. Hi, I just want to say something a little bit humorous, and also when you were talking about your grandmother, my mother was in a nursing home, and at 99, she fell in the nursing home and she broke her hip. So all they were saying in the emergency room when they brought her in, like, this lady's 99, like they couldn't even get, you know, they were just like so flabbergasted. And she was little, she was tiny. And she lived to 101 and a half, even afterwards. But but she always walked, and she loved to walk. And I think some people take walking as a chore. And I mean, I really feel that way. People take it as, oh, I have to go here, but you know, I parked over there. I got to walk this extra block or two. And sometimes my husband knows I'll park at the other end of the parking lot just to get in those few extra steps.
Yeah. And that's a great tip. Like, we should all be doing that as much as we can. Park a little bit further, or take the stairs. Mary, did you want to say something?
Yeah, the relationship part is so important. I think that I'm noticing it as I'm getting out more for networking, which isn't a lot every day for certain, but it definitely helps. But I also know several people that are battling cancer. And I'm going to tell you that I believe COVID just like had these people that mentally they've withdrawn. Some of them are family members, and we can't even talk to them. We can't even find out what's going on. We just had actually 2 of them pass away, and we didn't even know the extent of the condition or what they were going through. But I do believe that they isolated themselves so much and didn't come out of their houses except for going to treatment, only had their husbands. And I think it contributed to the cancer. You know, they should have survived. Let me put it that way. They should have survived longer. I'll put it that way. Yeah, they went through all the treatment. I think that mentally it takes a toll if you don't even have one connection to get you out of your head.
Yeah, just to feel some companionship and you know, laugh a little with somebody. It's so important. And our society is messed up in many ways because, you know, let's face it, a lot of people as they age, they end up in nursing homes.
Yep.
And it's just not the same if, you know, a nurse stops by a couple of times a day and they're really isolated. I mean, my grandmother, my great grandmother, she didn't speak English. So she was Italian. She never learned English. She came here in 1933, but yeah, so it's hard, you know, and one thing that I think is very interesting, I was talking about with this medical anthropologist that I learned, is that just for you to kind of have an idea of why this is so important for us, because our community is about our survival, right? So if you go back to, you know, 2,000 years ago or 1,000 years ago or whatever, as we, well, this is going way back, like hundreds of thousands of years, what made, one of the big things that helped us transition from being animals to humans was that we learned how to share. We learned how to help each other. Animals don't do that. They may for their offspring, right? But you won't see, you know, an adult deer getting food for another adult deer. That doesn't happen. Animals do not do that. Even apes and chimps, apparently I think chimpanzees will do it a little bit, but begrudgingly. So one thing that really distinguishes us from animals is that we share. We share work and we share food. And if we see somebody's broken down on the side of the road, or, you know, somebody's injured, we help them. That's a biological imperative that we have, because of how our brains are structured, we have literally been, it's being with people is necessary for survival, and we all know that deep inside, like our brains. So it's like a biological imperative. Well, this is not just woo-woo, you know, I just want to be with a friend. This feels like an existential crisis. Loneliness is an existential crisis, meaning we feel that our very survival is threatened. That's some deep stuff. So it's very, very important. And, you know, building relationships as you retire, you know, like finding outlets. Like my mom, who's 75, she messaged me this morning. She said, I can't make the call because I'm going to yoga and mahjong. She's doing mahjong now. And she's communicating and interacting with other women her age. And she says, it's wonderful. It's like the best time of her life, actually. She was not looking forward to retirement, and now she's very happy. So we have to foster those connections. We have to go out of our way to do it. And as people, you know, those of us who can, let's try to remember that there are lonely people out there. And I'm not here to preach to you all, but, you know, if you can, I think it's important to help others. The other thing too about helping others is we need that too, like it feeds us. There's a whole body of research around volunteering and helping others actually reduces the stress response in the body. Like they've actually measured people's cortisol levels and these things. So you know, they've done research on this in multiple different arenas. So it helps us also to volunteer. And that's more of a stress related thing. So let's move on to sleep. Okay, Jean has something in here. So loneliness depends on the person, yes. So the thing is, I think we have this whole thing that we know called introverts and extroverts and ambiverts, right? So some people are introverts, and that means that when they're alone, they recharge. And an extrovert is someone, when they're with people, they recharge. So just because you're alone a lot, it doesn't mean that you're lonely. That's Jean's point, and I agree with that. That you could be alone. I mean, my mom's actually a pretty extreme introvert, and she's alone most of the time, but she also does specifically chooses to go out and get community interaction in small spurts. And, you know, she's happy like that. So there's a difference between being lonely and being alone. So sleep. If you didn't sleep, you know, basically we need to sleep or we die. Like this is a real biological thing. In particular, REM sleep. If you were to not get REM sleep for, let's say, a couple of months, you would die. Like that's how important sleep is. Sleep, one of the biggest things that I want to alert you to is that poor sleep hygiene, or just not getting enough sleep over a long period of time, does increase the risk for Alzheimer's. So that's you know, when we think of aging, right, one of the biggest, I think, fears for a lot of people is dementia and Alzheimer's. So sleep is very, very important for every aspect of your health, but in particular, your memory, cognitive function stuff, like absolutely essential. So the recommendation, pretty much if you Google, how much sleep should I get, from every reputable website down to the not so reputable ones, you're going to see the same thing. The recommendation is 7 to 9 hours a night. If you sleep, if you chronically are sleeping 10 hours a night, you would think it would be a good thing, but it's not. And this is based on mostly a huge body of epidemiological research. That's where they'll look at a population level. They're not taking people and putting 100 people and sleep depriving them, and then 100 and giving them normal, like this. That epidemiological research is we surveyed 100,000 people, and then we looked at their medical records, or something like that. So on a big grand kind of population level, they're looking at less than 7 or more than 9 is going to increase your risk for pretty much any disease that you can think of, like chronic diseases of aging, cancer. Obviously, I mentioned Alzheimer's, obesity, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease. Yeah, that's how important sleep is. My recommendation, everybody's different, to Jean's point, everybody's different. So some people are more efficient at their sleep than others. So you may be a very efficient sleeper, and when you get 7, you are just on top of the world. But if you were to get 8 or 8.5, you might feel groggy. So pay attention to that within yourself. For me, I know my sweet spot is 7.5 to 8 hours. 7 is a little, 9, I rarely get 9. I'm very disciplined about my sleep because I'm a not efficient sleeper. So any questions about this, or also just comments about sleep? Like, have you noticed sleep affects your health? How you feel? Excuse me, how you feel? No? No issues with sleep? You burn calories while you sleep. That's true. You burn calories. As long as you are alive, you're burning calories. You can rest assured on that.
I'm a terrible sleeper. It's the first thing that I sacrifice if I want to do anything. I'm always the last person to bed. If even if I'm home, like tonight, finally everybody's leaving me alone. It's 10 o'clock at night. Now I'm like, just the time that I think I should be slowing down is the time that I say, but I could get 15 more emails answered because it's quiet finally. And then, once I sleep, I'm okay, but for the most part, but I often will wake up like 4 a.m. But if I do that 3 days in a row or something, let's say that I'm out, like this past weekend, I went to Nashville, which is a lot of fun, by the way. If anybody wants any recommendations, let me know. Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night. By Monday, man, I can't remember words. That's how it mostly impacts me. I'm just tired. It takes me a few days to catch up. Of course, I'm also drinking. So, beer. Right. So that's extra bad.
Yeah.
Not stopping me, but I see the impact.
It doesn't stop you, right? Yeah. And that's what I was talking about earlier, like that feedback loop, yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Liz. There was one study that there's a lot of clinical intervention trials that have been done on sleep. Obviously, it's not just all epidemiological, like where they have these sleep studies, right? They'll a lot of them that I've read about relate to eating. And this has been actual controlled trials where they sleep deprive this group, and then they don't sleep deprive this group, and they weigh how much they eat, and it's like multiple studies that have been done on this. And we as humans, we definitely eat more food when we're sleep deprived. We have more cravings. I mean, that's a pretty quick feedback loop. So, yeah, so it definitely is affecting us. I see some stuff in the chat. Sleep aids, there's a question about sleep aids. So it depends on the sleep aid. If you take a sedative, it will affect the quality of your sleep, yes, adversely. So you probably won't get as much REM. That's like, if you take like Klonopin or Ambien or, like heavy duty, like benzodiazepines and those sorts of things. But there are a lot of natural substances that you could take. But even melatonin, which is a natural substance, it's a hormone, it's a neurotransmitter that we make, but you can take it as a supplement. Even that can affect the quality of your sleep if you don't take the right amount. So if you took something for your sleep and you wanted to sleep better and you found that it was disruptive, that's entirely possible for that to happen. Getting to sleep can be a problem, Kathleen says. Val, similar thing, quieting the mind. So Blair, you're saying you don't have steady sleep. I have mild sleep apnea. Oh yeah, thank you for bringing this up. So, and I just remembered something that I wanted to say to Liz. So there are two camps, right? There are people who are choosing to get poor sleep, and there are people who want to sleep more and they can't. So first recognize which camp you're in. If you're in the poor, I'm just choosing thing, I think it's just a matter, again, of every other aspect of like healthy lifestyle choices. It's got to be, you got to have a reason for doing it. If you know that you're just going to, you're going to be fine in a couple of days, it's not a big deal, then you're not going to change that. And maybe that'll be fine. It's not like you're necessarily getting poor sleep every single night. So just recognize which camp you're in. And if you're in the deliberately getting poor sleep camp, then that's up to you to assess why you think it's not important to get good sleep. And also, I think, Liz, what you were alluding to, which is very important to talk about, is that if we set up our lives where we just have too much going on, and this also relates to my mind is racing and I can't fall asleep thing, right? Or waking up in the middle of the night like, oh, did I do that? Oh, I got to email that person, right? That's all too much stress in your life, perhaps, right? Most likely. You're taking on too much. You're just doing too much. And therefore, you're either choosing to stay up late because you need that downtime. You want that alone time, just to do your thing, or it's affecting your psyche and you're not able to fall asleep. Either way, that's stress. And that's taking on too much responsibility. So that's a whole nother thing. But we, yes, Jean, I agree. Jean puts a book in the chat, Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. I read that book twice. It's an amazing book. And if you read it, it might motivate you to get better sleep because you'll be like, oh man, I better get better sleep. So, but it's good. It's good. He talks all about everything that I'm talking about here. So if you are taking on too much, that's about assessing your life. And I did Amy, I did a really good podcast with this woman, Lauren, and she talks about how she does a time audit because she has 2 small children. She's a performer. And she basically, for a month, she tracked everything that she did all day long, not just in her work, in her personal life. I think that's pretty, I would do it for like a week maybe, but you can do a time audit and then you can step back and say, oh, maybe I can take these things off of my plate. Because that if you're not sleeping because of stress is killing you slowly, but it is. And it's affecting your immune function too. If you're sleep deprived, your immune function is compromised. That's also a ton of research on that. So quieting your mind, maybe what can help with that is actually taking on less responsibility, doing less. I mean, what are we after anyway? Like, I know I'm like, I love my work and stuff, but sometimes I have to step back and say, like yesterday, I'm very busy and my daughter wanted me to pick her up in Brooklyn. I just dropped everything and went and picked her up. And I said, you know what? My work can wait. And I think maybe taking a more global perspective on that of like, what's important to me in life? Is my health important to me? Of course, your work is important to you. Of course, maybe volunteering or caring, you know, some of us have caring for elderly parents or whatever. Like all of that is important, but we also have to protect ourselves. We have to protect ourselves if we want to live a long, vibrant, healthy life. And also just want to mention, Blair talked about CPAP, sleep apnea. If you're tired all the time and you think you're getting good sleep, get a sleep study. Because you may have very mild sleep apnea, or there's like degrees to this, the chronic obstructive airway. I forget that there are degrees to sleep disruption that you might not even be aware of. So yeah, I feel like sleep could be like, I need to do a whole like hour-long session on just sleep alone. But the main takeaway is if you're not prioritizing sleep, you should find out why you're not doing that. And second of all, stress will affect your ability to get good sleep. And remember that movement enhances sleep. Hormones, that's a whole nother talk too. Hormones, as we go into, menopause, perimenopause and postmenopause, for women in particular, progesterone goes low. Progesterone is like our sleep hormone, one of our sleep hormones. So there's a lot that can be done around hormones. Estrogen surges in the middle of the night. Can you say night sweats or waking up like, that could be an estrogen surge. So if you recognize the hormonal stuff, Liz, I'm sorry I'm making you sleepy. If you recognize hormones affecting your sleep, then seek out a doctor who knows what they're doing with hormones, because this is huge reason that a lot of women, especially women, Steve is not a woman, I'm assuming, that we suffer from hormone sleep issues. So it's 12:51. I want to get to nutrition. I'm always maybe overly ambitious on these calls. But I'll summarize very quickly about nutrition. 2 things. Well, actually 3. Water. You have to stay hydrated, and it is a thing that I've seen a lot, like when I worked in the functional medicine practice, that a lot of women, older women, were dehydrated, or not just women, men and women. So we have to drink enough water, or else you're going to be dehydrated, and that's affecting everything. It's like sleep. It's like so foundational. Water and sleep, you die very quickly without those things. So, we're kind of bumbling along, not doing it so well. That's not okay. Drinking water is absolutely very important. So that's nutrition. The other thing is protein. We talked about muscle loss. Women tend to undereat protein. That is a very, very common thing. You probably aren't eating like, I'm just saying, like, if you've worked with us or you're working with us, you might be eating enough protein. But if you haven't, or you're not, high chance you're not, actually. It's not as intuitive as we think it is. And we need more than we think we do, especially as we age. And one thing that happens as we get into like our 50s and 60s, a lot of people, the digestion slows down. So taking a digestive aid can be really helpful, because you may want to eat more protein, but feel like it makes you feel heavy, or just not realize that you're not digesting protein so well. So taking a digestive enzyme can be like earth-shattering. I started taking them probably a couple, like when we did that little class in June, so probably about five months now or so. And I didn't know that I thought, I'm getting enough protein and everything, but it's so interesting, because now that I take these digestive enzymes, I crave protein less. Why is that? Because I was taking in a lot of protein, but I wasn't digesting it, breaking down and absorbing it well. So the enzyme helps with that. And what I noticed that now is, those moons that you're supposed to have, we're all supposed to have on our fingernails, the little white moons. those, I didn't have those for like 20 years. They're coming back since I've been taking these digestive enzymes. So there's a company called Pure Encapsulations that I like. Val asks, do I recommend a brand? I'll put it in the chat. Pure Encapsulations. It's called Ultra Digestive Enzyme, something like that. So be aware of that. So not only do you want to eat protein, you got to make sure you're digesting it properly. Most of like I need to eat like about 90 grams of protein a day. That's like, you know, fish, chicken, meat, eggs, legumes, all vegetable, everything contains protein. Every single thing you eat contains protein except for oil, like pure oil, because it's so important for us. And our brain, if your protein levels are low, your brain senses that every day. It's on a daily cycle. The hypothalamus senses that, and it will cause you to have a craving. The only thing is your brain is not going to send you an email saying, hey, Kathleen, you didn't eat enough protein. You need to get another 20 grams. It's not like that. It's just, I just have a craving, and you end up just eating whatever. How much protein
How
you
much
eat,
pro-
that's good question, Miriam. It's also in the chat.
Okay.
So it's individual. The government recommends a certain range. I think it's low, the government range, but I'll put it in the chat. I would say it's the minimum is 1.4 grams per pound of target body weight. Okay, so if you weigh 200 pounds, but you know that you actually feel great when you weigh 170, like you feel like 200 is too high for you, think about it doesn't have to be your 15-year-old weight, okay, or whatever, or the model who's your height, weight. Look at your body and where do you feel strong and energized and healthy? That's your target weight. And that should, if you multiply that number times 1.4, no, that's not right. Hold on. I feel like I'm getting the math wrong here. So for me, that would be, no, that's not right. I'll have to follow up with you and give you the formula because I can't remember exactly. In kilograms, I know it's like a pound. If you do in kilograms, it's 1 gram per pound, per kilogram. So if you weigh, 80 kilograms, it's 80 grams. That's a lower estimate. There's a range. But for most women, let's put it this way. If you weigh more than 150 pounds, you need at least 80, 90 grams of protein a day. Just bare bone. I mean, just try it. You have to experiment. I can't ordain to you, oh, Miriam, you need to eat exactly this amount of protein. There's a range for everybody, and you have to listen to your body. You can get enough protein with a plant-based diet, but you got to be vigilant about it. Really, really vigilant about it. And we could get into a whole discussion about a vegetarian diet, but we don't have time. I actually have a call at 1 today. So I'm sorry, like I always try to get in a lot of good information, and I hope this wasn't too rushed, but I think the protein thing is really, really important. It's like way more important. And if you want to email me to ask me, hey, Jill, am I doing this right? Just email me. It's a simple math equation for you to start. It's not the end point, it's the starting point for you to eat that way and then say, oh, wow, I feel great. Or, oh, maybe this is too much, or maybe I need more. I want to mention to you that we do have a program, like an actual program that we're offering called Dynamic Aging. And that is a 12-week program working with Michaela, who works for me, doing both physical activity and nutrition. So you get both. So you will get like workouts from her and guidance on fitness, but also, refining your diet with the protein and all of that stuff. So I'll put that in the link in the chat, but also just, probably send out emails and stuff. So we have like 2 minutes. Did I get to all the questions in the chat, or if anybody has a question? Anybody have a burning question, Robin?
I just want to thank you. I think how you pull this together and just make it so succinct is very, very helpful. So thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you. I'm glad that it was felt succinct.
Definitely.
Anybody questions or comments before we go? Good. So take one thing and run with it. You don't have to do all of these things, but I want you to be aware of everything that's connected. Thank you, everybody. Liz is off to eat some protein. Barbara, thank you for being here. Yeah, this was fun.
That's great.
So see you guys at another call soon.
Sounds good.
All right, bye.